Go ahead.
This is chapter 9, The King. We have now to turn and see the sudden change of fortune which lifted the exile to a throne. The heavy cloud which had brooded so long over the doomed king broke in a lightning crash on the disastrous field of Gilboa. Where is there a sadder and more solemn story of the fate of a soul which makes shipwreck of faith and of good conscience than that awful page which tells how, godless, wretched, mad with despair and measureless pride, he flung himself on his bloody sword and died a suicide's death, with sons and armor-bearer and all his men, a ghastly court of corpses laid around him. He had once been brave, modest, and kind, full of noble purposes and generous affections, and he ended so. Into what doleful regions of hate and darkness may self-will drag a soul, when once the reins fall loose from a slackened hand? And what a pathetic beam of struggling light gleams through heavy clouds, in the grateful exploit of the men of Jabesh, who remembered how he had once saved them, while yet he could care and dare for his kingdom, and periled their lives to bear the poor headless corpse to its rude resting place. The news is received by the fugitive at Ziklag in striking and characteristic fashion. He first flames out in fierce wrath upon the lying Amalekite, who had hurried with the tidings and sought favor by falsely representing that he had killed the king on the field. A short shrift and a bloody end were his, and then the wrath melts into mourning, forgetting the mad hatred and wild struggles of that poor soul and his own wrongs, remembering only the friendship and nobleness of his earlier days. He casts over the mangled corpses of Saul and Jonathan the mantle of his sweet elegy. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And bathes them with the healing waters of his unstained praise and undying love. Not till these two offices of justice and affection have been performed does he remember himself and the change in his own position which had been effected. He had never thought of Saul as standing between him and the kingdom. The first feeling on his death was not, as it would have been with a less devout and less generous heart, a flush of gladness at the thought of the empty throne, but a sharp pang of pain from the sense of an empty heart.
Sharp pain. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Pain of pain. Yes. It's good.
And even when he begins to look forward to his own new course, there's that same remarkable passiveness which we have observed already. His first step is to inquire of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go up to any of the cities of Judah?" He will do nothing in this crisis of his fortunes, when all which had been so long a hope seemed to be rapidly becoming a fact, until his shepherd shall lead him. Rapid and impetuous as he was by nature, schooled to swift decisions, followed by still swifter action, knowing that a blow struck at once, while all was chaos and despair at home, might set him on the throne. He holds nature and policy and the impatience of his people in check to hear what God will say. So fully did he fulfill the vow of his early psalm, "My strength, upon thee will I wait."
I'm going to read, okay? So which psalm is that one?
That's 59, verse 9.
59. Reasons, and you read it actually, I mean, the prophet placed the share David's life story with the king and brother and sister exactly at this point. So amazing how God arranges things together. Also, I need to wake myself up by reading, so sorry. Yeah. Okay, let's see. We can fancy, continue the reading, we can fancy the grand march to the ancient Hebron, where the great fathers of the nation lay in the rock-hewn tombs. Even before the dead soul, you know who were buried there? Abraham, Isaac, I think Sarah was buried as well. Okay, so even before the death of soul, there is a strength, and it been rapidly increasing by a constant stream of fugitives from the confusion and the misery into which the kingdom had fallen. Even Benjamin, Saul's own tribe, sent him some of its famous archers as sinister omen of the king's winning fortunes. The hardy half-independent men of Manasseh and Gad, from the pastoral uplands on the east of Jordan, whose faces, according to the vivid description of the chronicler, 1 Chronicle 12:8, were like the faces of lions, and were as swift and rose upon the mountains, sought his standard, and from his own kinsmen of Judah, recruits day by day came to David to help him until it was a great host like the host of God. With such forces, it would have been child play to have subdued any scattered troops of the former dynasty, which might still have been in a condition to keep the field. But he made no attempt of the sort. Even when he came to Hebron, he took no measures to the ones any claim to the crown. The language of the history seems rather to imply a disbanding of his army, unless their settling down to domestic life in the villages around Hebron without the thought of winning the kingdom by arms. And his elevation to the partial monarchy which he in first possessed was the spontaneous act of the men of Judah, who come to him and anointed him king over Judah. The limits of his territory are substantially those of the kingdom over which his descendants ruled after Jeroboam's revolt, thus indicating the existence of a natural line of cleavage between north and south. The geographical position of Benjamin finally attached it to the latter monarchy, but for the present, the wish to retain the supremacy which it had while the king was one of the tribe made its nucleus of a feeble and lingering opposition to David, headed by Saul's cousin Abner, and rallying round his incompetent son Ishbosheth. The chronology of this period is obscure. David reigned in Hebron 7 years and a half, and Ishbosheth's Fulton sovereignty only occupied 2 of these years, and those evidently the last. It would appear almost as if the Philistines had held the country, with the exception of Judah, in such force that no rival cared to claim the dangerous dignity, and that 5 years passed before the invaders were so far cleared out as to leave leisure for civil war. The Canaanitish worship of Baal seems to have lingered in Saul's family. One of his uncles were named Baal. His son was really called Ishbaal, father of Baal, which was contemporarily converted into Ishbosheth, man of shame. So also Mephibosheth was probably Meribbaal, fighter for Baal. The summary narrative of these 7 years presents a still useful king in a very lovable light. The same temper which had marked his first acts after Saul's death is strikingly brought out in 2 Samuel 20 to what? What is that? That's
2 Samuel 2 to 4.
Oh, 2 to 4, sorry. He seemed to have left the conduct of the war altogether to Joab, as if he shrunk from striking a single blow for his own advancement. When thus interfered, it was on the side of peace, to curb and chastise ferocious vengeance and dastardly assassination. The incidents recorded all go to make up a picture of rare generosity, of patient waiting for God to fulfill His purposes, of a longing that the miserable strife between the tribe of God's inheritance should end. He sends grateful messages to Jabesh Gilead and will not begin to conflict with the insurgents. The only actual fight recorded is provoked by Abner and managed with unwanted mildness by Joab. The list of his children born in Hebron is inserted in the very heart of the story of the insurrection, a token of the quiet domestic life of peaceful joys and cares which he led while the storm was raging without. Eagerly and without suspicion, he welcomes Abner's advances towards reconciliation. He falls for a moment to the level of his times and yields to a strong temptation in making the restoration of his long-lost wife, Michal, the condition of further negotiations, a demand which was strictly just, no doubt, but for which little more can be said. The generosity of his nature, the ideal purity of his love, which that incident's shadows shines out again in his indignation at Joab's murder of Abner, though he was too meek to avenge it. There is no more beautiful picture in his life than that of his fallen the bear, where what is called bear. How to pronounce that word? B-I-E-R?
I think it's actually pronounced by.
By, okay.
It's a movable frame on which a coffin or corpse is placed.
Okay, let's do it again in this sentence. There is no more beautiful picture in his life than that of his fallen the by, where lay the bloody corpse of the man who had been his enemy ever since he had known him, and sealing the reconciliation which death ever makes in noble souls by the pathetic dirge he chanted over Abner's grave. We have a glimpse of his people's unbounded confidence in him, given incidentally when we're told that his sorrow pleased them, as whatsoever the king did pleased all the people. We have a glimpse of the feebleness of his new monarchy, as against the fierce soldier who had done so much to make it. In his acknowledgment, there was a yet weak being but recently anointed king. And then these vehement sons of Zeruiah were too strong for him. And we have a remarkable trace of connection with the Psalms in the closing words with which he invokes on Joab the vengeance which he was yet felt himself unable to execute. Am I? How to pronounce that word?
Execute.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Should know better.
Right.
The Lord shall reward the doer for evil according to his wickedness. Execute. Yes, a good word. The only other incident recorded of his reign in Hebron is his execution of summary justice upon the murderers of the poor puppet king Ishbosheth, upon whose death, fallen so closely to that of Abner, the whole resistance to David's power collapses. There had never been any real popular opposition. His enemies are emphatically named as the horse of Saul. We find Abner himself admitting that the elder of Israel wanted David as a king, so that when he was gone, it is two Benjaminites who gave the corps de grace to Ishbosheth and end the whole shadowy rivalry power. Immediately, the rulers of all the tribes come out to Hebron with the tender of the crown. They offer it on the tribal grounds of kingship, of his military service, even in Saul's reign, out of the divine promise of the throne. A Solomon pact was made, and David was anointed in Hebron, a king by divine right, but also a constitutional monarch chosen by popular election and limited in his powers. The first result is a new strength is the capture of the old hill fortress of the Jebusites, the city of Melchizedek, which and frowned down upon Israel unsubdued till now, and whose inhabitants trusted so absolutely in its natural strength that the answer to the demand for surrender was the jeer. Thou wilt not come hither, but the blind and the lame will drive thee away. This time David does not leave the word to others for the first time. For 7 years, we read, the king and his men went to Jerusalem. Established there as his capital, he reigns for some 10 years with unbroken prosperity over loyal and loving people. With this for the summary of the whole period, David went on and grew great, and the Lord God of hosts was with him. That is in 2 Samuel, verse what? Verse 10? That's not right.
2 Samuel 5, verse
5:10. So 5 verse 10. These years are marked by 3 principal events: the bringing up the ark to the city of David, the promise by Nathan of the perpetual dominion of his horse, and the unbroken flow of victories over the surrounding nations. These are the salient points of the narrative in the book of Samuel, 2 Samuel 5 to 8, and are all abundantly illustrated by the Psalms, which I have next day, to consider the sons of the king. How did the fugitive bear his sudden change of fortune? What were his thoughts when asked the dignity which he had ever expected and never thought was his? The answer is ready to our hand in that grand Psalm
18.
18. Oh wow, I was thinking about that psalm a few days ago. Which he spake in the day the Lord delivered him from all his enemies and from the hand of a soul. Now you can read that psalm for us. That can be Psalm 18 is a long psalm. Hallelujah. Is that amazing? It's exactly the portion I need to prepare for next coming Saturday. That's going to be tomorrow teaching. Can you believe that? Perfect.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. God's lining things up. Look at that. No, look at the Lord told me to look at the number. Look at the number in here.
Oh, wow.
In the middle. Look at that.
Yeah, there you go.
Can you believe that? Go ahead. Amazing, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, anyway. Things just happened to me. So. Go ahead.
Of David, the servant of the Lord. He sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge.
In whom I take refuge.
He is my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled round me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called to the Lord, I cried to my God for help. From his temple he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. The earth trembled and quaked. The foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him. the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced, with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven, the voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemies, great bolts of lightning, and routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare. At your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath from your nostrils. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me on the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The Lord has dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanliness of my hands, he has rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord. I have not done evil by turning from my God. All his laws are before me. I have not turned away from his decrees. I have been blameless before him and have kept myself from sin. The Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanliness of my hands in his sight. To the faithful you show yourself faithful. To the blameless you show yourself blameless. To the pure you show yourself pure. But to the crooked you show yourself shrewd. You save the humble, but bring low those whose eyes are haughty. You, O Lord, keep my lamp burning. My God turns my darkness into light. With your help I can advance against a troop. With my God I can scale a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is flawless. He is a shield for all those who take refuge in him. For who is God besides the Lord? And who is the rock except our God? It is God who arms me with strength and makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to stand on the heights. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. You give me your shield of victory, and your right hand sustains me. You stoop down to make me great. You broaden the path beneath me, so that my ankles do not turn. I pursued my enemies and overtook them. I did not turn back till they were destroyed. I crushed them so they could not rise. They fell beneath my feet. You armed me with strength for battle. You made my adversaries bow at my feet. You made my enemies turn their backs in flight, and I destroyed my foes. They cried for help, but there was no one to save them. To the Lord, but he did not answer. I beat them as fine as dust borne on the wind. I poured them out like mud in the streets. You have delivered me from the attacks of the people. You have made me the head of nations. People I did not know are subject to me. As soon as they hear me, they obey me. Foreigners cringe before me. They all lose heart. They come trembling from their strongholds. The Lord lives. Praise be to my rock. Exalted be God, my Savior. He is the God who avenges me, who subdues nations under me, who saved me from my enemies. You exalted me above my foes. From violent men you rescued me. Therefore I will praise you among the nations, O Lord. I will sing praises to your name. He gives his king great victories. He shows unfailing kindness to his anointed, to David and his descendants forever.
Bless the Lord. Wow. Glory to God.
Amen.
What a mighty song. The language of this superscription seems to connect the song with the beautiful internal and external repose, which preceded and promoted David's purpose to build a house for the Lord. 2 Samuel 7 chapter. The same thankfulness was glows so brightly in the psalm, stimulates and desire, and the emphatic reference to the mercy promised by God to his seed forevermore, which chooses the hymn, points perhaps to the definite promise of the perpetuity of the kingdom to his descendants, which was God's answer to the same desire. But whether the psalm belonged to the years of the partial sovereignty in Hebron, or to those with the complete dominion and Jerusalem, it cannot be later than the second of these two dates, whatever may have been the time of its composition, the feelings which expresses, as those of the first refreshness of thankful praise when he was firmly settled in the kingdom. Some critic would throw it onward to the very close of his life, but this has little in its favor beyond the fact that the author of the book of Samuel has placed his version of the psalm among the record David's last days. There is, however, nothing to show that then the position is due to chronicle considerations. The victories over heathen nations, which are supposed to be referred to in the psalm, and are relied on by the advocates at a later date, really point to the earlier, which was the time of his most brilliant conquests, and the marked assertions of his own purity, as well as triumphant tune to the whole, neither of which characteristics correspond to the sand and shaded years after his great fall, point in the same direction. On the whole, then, we may fairly take the psalm as belonging to the bright beginning of the monarchy, and as showing us how well the king remembered the vows which exiled and mingled with his tears. It's one long outpouring of rapturous thankfulness and triumph and adoration, which stream from a full heart in buoyant waves of a song. Nowhere else, even the Psalms, and if not there, certainly nowhere else, is there such continuous tide of unmingled praise, such magnificence of imaginary, such a passion. Such magnificence of imagery, such a passion for love to the delivering God, such joyous energy of conquering trust. It throbs throughout with the lifeblood of devotion. The strong flame, white with the word other, quivers with its own intensity, and it steadily rises heavenward. All the terrors and pains and dangers of the weary years, the blank fuel for the ruddy glow, melt into warmth, too great for smoke, too equable to blaze. The plaintive notes that had so often wailed from his harp, sounded as if the night wind had been wandering among its chords, have all led up to this rushing burst of full-tuned gladness. The word blessedness of heaven is the anticipated when sorrows gone by are understood, seen in their connection with the joy to which they have led, and are felt to be the theme for deepest thankfulness. Thank God that for the consolation of the whole world, we have this hymn of praise from the same lips which said, "My life is spent with grief, and my years with sighing. We have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. The tremulous minors of trustful sorrow shall swell into rapturous praise that he who compassed with the foes cry unto God, cry upon God, will hear or yonder, sing this song unto the Lord in the day that the Lord delivers him from the hand of all his enemies." Praise the Lord. To be continued. That's the end.